welcome. We're about to start our next panel. To everyone who's joining us online, welcome back to you also. Thank you for staying with us. We know you're all over the world. We're delighted to have you. And for people in this room, it's been a pretty extraordinary 2 days here. We had two fantastic panels yesterday, as Tarun mentioned at the beginning, and we had an address from a Nobel laureate from Amartya Sen yesterday. Today we just had a riveting health panel. And before that, while Babar Ali Saab could not join us, we actually managed to talk about him, his context in Pakistan, and read his very powerful words about a different conception of the region. As rich as all of that is, perhaps we've saved the best for the last, because the overall theme this year for the symposium has been 75 years of modern South Asia. It is 75 years since the British Empire left the gateway of Bombay and the viceroys left forever, and a new world was born in that moment. We know it came with pain, but it also came with a lot of hope. We've talked about some of that. And for this last panel, we thought we would actually look forward even more. We would talk to the young students and scholars that are affiliated with the Mittal, who are the hope. Everything we've been talking about that needs to be done, should be done, must happen, everything is in their hands, so no pressure. Let me introduce our speakers in order. Nosher Ali Khan, he's up on the screen for those in the room. Hello, Nosher, nice to see you again. So Nosher Ali Khan is graduating this year. He's Harvard class of 23. Oh, I'm sorry, he's Harvard class of 23. He's an economics concentrator. He's won a number of awards from the Mittal Institute, actually, and he's in fact the recipient of this year's Seed for Change grant in Pakistan, where he'll be looking at creating a market for fresh stone fruits. But he's going to talk today to us about community building in northern Pakistan in the mountainous region through music and literature. Nosher, welcome to you. We also have Vaishnavi Patel with us immediately here. Vaishnavi, hello, welcome to you. Vaishnavi is a Ph.D. candidate in the history of art and architecture. Her advisor, Gina Kim, is right here. So Gina may have some very difficult questions for Vaishnavi at some point of an art historical variety, but Vaishnavi is also going to start an internship at the Met in New York this year. And she is going to speak about mother goddesses in early South Asia. Welcome, Vaishnavi. We also have Vidya Subramanian with us. Vidya Subramanian is the Raghunathan Family Fellow at the Mittal Institute this year in residence. We've been very happy to have her.
I'm very happy to be here.
It's a wonderful fellowship that the Raghunathan family makes possible, which supports the work of one serious scholar, and this year it is Vidya. Vidya actually she's an interdisciplinary researcher who works at the intersection of society and technology. She's going to speak to us about she's going to speak to us about biometric identity project called Aadhaar in India and its implications. So let me just start in alphabetical order. Nosher, you're right up on there on the screen. Would you start us off?
Yeah, perfect. Just let me find my presentation. It's always a hassle.
As long as your computer doesn't cut out.
Oh, I'm in Pakistan, so you never know with the internet here. But hi, everyone. My name is Nosher. Thank you for that wonderful introduction, Hitesh. Just to correct you there, I took a gap year, so I'm now graduating in 24. So I still have a lot of time at Harvard with the Mittal Institute. And I'll be talking about community building through music in northern Pakistan. And the title for my presentation today is Moving Mountains with Music. So yeah, I come from a small valley called Hunza in the northernmost region of Pakistan. It is in a constitutional limbo between India and Pakistan, and has been remote because of its terrain and its geography. And until recently, until actually like 50 years ago, there was very limited movement and access to the region. So all this, because of these remote mountains that you can see on this on the presentation, the people were secluded from the traditions and customs that were evolving as India and Pakistan went through independence and all these ideas coming in. This region was like away from all that. And this is a photo actually from the 1960s where we can see that it's very alien looking to a normal Pakistani, or how my friends say that to me. And it's always like, but music and literature always played an important role in the region, right? Because they were so secluded, the way people would share their stories and share their experiences was through music and literature. And I was grown in this environment until I came to Harvard, where I realized that this wasn't the common occurrence, where people did not gather on every Saturday and just sung poetry to one another. You know, communities would just gather in Hunza and sing poetry and have sessions called bosoms, where everyone would participate in that. And upon coming to Harvard, I was like, my small bubble was broken. I was like, wait, what's going on? Isn't this the norm everywhere? And I was taking, in my freshman fall, I was taking this class with Professor Ali Asani, who's been a great mentor for me. Shout out Professor Asani, if you're there, which I hope you are. And I was taking this class with him, which was about understanding Muslim voices in contemporary literature. And I read literature from various Muslim countries such as Egypt, Syria, Palestine, and I realized something, which was how important it was to document story, not only to preserve history, but also for future generations to learn from it and just to learn from it, basically. So that's what I did. With the help of Professor Asani, I reached out to the Mittal Institute and got a summer research grant to go back home, travel around and document this unique cultural music and literature that we had. And this was a very fun project for me. I would be in these gatherings regardless. All I did now was take a few mics and cameras and just would go around making very annoying videos and stuff, right? But what this did was it inspired the people around me, my friends and everyone. They came together. They were like, wait, this is something that we need to work towards. And eventually this became a bigger project and we were able to release a web series on YouTube, Spotify, and other forms of like digital media, where we would not only share our culture, but also translate it so that more people would be able to understand. And this whole project got a lot of like amazing, overwhelming response from the local community, as well as regions in Pakistan who see Hunza as this alien region. They were able to understand what's going on, why all this, why do they have all this music, and what does this actually mean? So when we were done with this project and we had all this overwhelming response, I was like, I need to do something else now. I need to take it to the next level. And then I reached out to the Lakshmi Mittal Institute again, and they funded me to travel around the region and document this literature just now in the form of an online library. So that's what we did. We took jeeps like days, went around remote valleys or all around the region, met up with young artists, young poets, and old poets, old artists, everyone, and we documented as much as possible, and then transcribed and transliterated all the content that we had onto Brusheski Lib, which is basically the first online collection of Brusheski literature. And let me just tell you about Brusheski here. Brusheski is like the primary language spoken in the Hunza region, and it's one of the very few isolate languages in the world, which means that it doesn't derive its roots from any major language. And it's been like a phenomena for many linguists worldwide. So, and it's also a spoken language. So this was our this was the biggest attempt, I would say, in the small community to actually transcribe this literature and make it available for everyone right now, and just have it as a form of resources for the generations to come. And then we took it a step further. What we did was I was in the community, and this was in COVID year. So I was back home in Hunza, and I was in the community with my friends, where we decided, hey, we're working on music and we're all passionate about mountaineering because of all these amazing mountains that we have around there. Why not just combine them and do something that shows the people around us that we're equally, if not more capable of our counterparts in other metropolises in Pakistan and in the wider world? So that's what we did. We had a team. We put together a team of young creatives, young filmmakers, artists, musicians, and mountaineers. And we set off to make the Guinness World Record for the world's highest musical and dance performance. Um, and this is a map of how we climbed the mountain. We took a lot of satellite imagery. It was a whole operation. The operation took us about 8 months because nothing of that sort had ever been done before. And we were working with local governments, like independent sponsors and stuff. And I'll just tell you a small story. When the first time that we went to the government, the local government, we told them of our idea. They were like, guys, you just go away. Before we say anything, just go away. You're crazy. You know, pagal ho gaye hain. That's what they told us. But I think that was the thing that kept us like that inspired us to move forward. We were like, people think this is unbelievable. Always in Hunza, there's always been this American or this European mountaineer who comes in, is supported by local porters and local guides, but takes all the credit. You know, he's the one who becomes the star of the documentary or on the front page of the newspaper. We wanted to change that. So we assembled this all Hunza team of sorts, all young people. We set off on this mission. We set off in late June. Took us about 30 to 40 days to complete the mission. Was very, I would say, was once in a lifetime experience, honestly, but also very dangerous. And finally, on the summit of Minglik Sar Peak at about 6,000 meters of elevation, we were able to perform the world's highest culture, dance, and musical performance. What this did was, apart from creating the world record, it inspired the people around us. You know, we come from this very small community. We were featured on amazing international media outlets such as the BBC, Al Jazeera, and many more. And it showed our community that these young people, despite not having the resources, are able to do something so important and so significant. And once we came back to the community after 2 weeks of trekking, we were welcomed and we were wholeheartedly, like everyone was celebrating our achievements. And in retrospect, now that I think about it, you know, it achieved so many important goals for me personally, which was, I wanted to show the people around me that anything is possible. If I could be the first person from Hunza to go to Harvard, I can also inspire others around me to do even greater things. You know, the only limit that we put ourselves is our own thinking. And once we have faith, we have all these young generations, especially in the subcontinent, have these abilities to become the best of the best in the world. And we had a humble attempt at that, and we succeeded. And now, whenever I go back to Hunza, which I will hopefully in 2 days, people come out and people talk about these amazing ideas, and there's just like this whole environment that's been fostering. And now no one says कि भैया पागल हो गए हैं. They actually encourage us. So that was a big achievement in itself. Thank you so much. And going forward, just to hit on the Seed for Change grant as well. Thanks to the Mittal Institute, I've won another grant, Seed for Change, where I'll be working with the local community in Hunza to improve agricultural practices in the region regarding stone fruit. And hopefully I'll be sharing more developments with the Institute and with the friends of the Institute soon. Thank you so much.
Nosher, thank you. You also made my words come true. I said we were maybe saving the best for the last with this panel, and also talking about the future. So all the things that need to be done, and you've already done something like that. So thank you very much. I do want to give you a fair warning, Nosher, because as an elderly person, it's my job. Mukesh Prasad is here. He's class of 93. I saw him taking notes, and he's going to recruit you into multiple projects very soon. So please know that a lot of emails is coming your way.
I've heard amazing things about the class of 93, so I'm excited for the emails.
Oh, well, that deserves applause. Okay. So, oh, that's right. That is true. Yeah, Mukesh is really, you've become too valuable. So I'm just yeah, that is Mukesh's wife. Nosher, thank you. Let's turn next to Vaishnavi Patel. Vaishnavi, please.
Thank you, Hitesh, and many thanks to the Mittal Institute team for organizing this wonderful symposium. I'm delighted to be sharing my ongoing research and projects with all of you today. As an art historian, I primarily work with material culture. During my graduate study, I've always been interested in exploring the lesser known of South Asian art. For my doctoral research at Harvard, I focus on the images of mother goddesses. South Asia has a rich corpus of such images. However, our understanding of the development of the mother goddess and her assimilation into the religions of South Asia is relatively limited. The mother and child are such a universal symbol of piety. From the image of the Egyptian goddess Isis with her child Horus that you see on the left, to the Christian symbol of Madonna and child on the right, we see this symbol across many ancient civilizations. In the context of South Asia, a fine example of mother goddess images would be the 3 sculptural panels found at the rock-cut cave shrines of Ellora near Aurangabad, Maharashtra. At Buddhist cave number 8, goddess Hathi is seated with her child next to her husband Panchaka. The Brahmanical cave number 21, the image in the center, also known as the Rameshwar cave, features a large display of the Saptamatrika, the 7 mother goddesses, each holding a child. Last but not least, at Jain cave number 32, on the right here, we find an image of goddess Ambika, seated on a lion under a mango tree with a child on her lap. While the goddesses are placed in spaces with diverse religious affiliations, Buddhist, Brahmanical, Jain, they are rendered in very similar ways. The questions that interest me the most are, who were these goddesses who were so similar yet belonged to different religions? And what does their presence in the religious spaces of Buddhist, Jain, and Hindu shrines say about who they were and how they were worshipped? My doctoral research focuses on representations of the mother goddess in South Asia from the 1st to the 10th centuries. Through the longue durée study of goddesses like the Buddhist Hathi, Brahmanical Saptamatrika, and the Jain Ambika, my dissertation aims to create an understanding of how and why the mother goddess cult developed in South Asia and what led to its assimilation in the religions of the Indian subcontinent. My dissertation lies at the intersection of art history, religious studies, and gender studies. While the Ellora example focuses on the trans-sectarian nature of the mother-child imagery and demonstrates the interactive nature of religions of early South Asia, there are many other themes that I intend to explore through my dissertation. By studying the origins and transmission of mother-child images throughout the subcontinent, I hope to illuminate how religious ideas were shared trans-regionally within South Asia. Looking at these early mother-child images through a gendered lens can also allow an insight into the development of a vocabulary for the female divine within South Asia and help enrich the categorization beyond the usual categories used in scholarship such as fertile and sensuous. Thus, studying these early goddesses is essential for me as they are precedents to goddesses that emerged later. In doing so, I hope to contribute to the social history of early India and our understanding of the role of the goddesses in the religious traditions of early South Asia. The Mittal Institute has been highly instrumental in supporting my research. In January 2020, I undertook a research trip to Gujarat where I studied the sculptures of the mother goddess from the site of Shamlaji. The site is interesting because the sculptures from this site demonstrate the evolution of the Saptamatrika, or the 7 mothers, in Brahmanical tradition. Here you can see through the images that the Saptamatrika transitions from a mother accompanied by a child, the image in the center, to a weapon-wielding Shakti described in the Devi Mahatmya in about a couple centuries. This transition appears to have happened from the 6th century onwards, owing to the popularity of the Devi Mahatmya during this period. I intend to continue my field research during the next academic year. where I'll be traveling to sites such as Ajanta, Ellora, Aihole, Badami, and many others, and museums across India to document and photograph these mother-child images in order to write my dissertation. Beyond my dissertation research, I've also been involved in various projects on campus and beyond. As Hitesh mentioned earlier, during the summers of 2019 and 2020, I worked at the Metropolitan Museum of Art with curator John Guy on the exhibition Tree and Serpent. During this time, I worked on object research and also created a timeline of South Asian history for the scope of the exhibition, which later turned into a full-scale project, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. And thanks to the generous support of the Mittal Institute, I'll be returning to the Met this summer to continue my work on the exhibition. This past semester, I've also been working at the Harvard Art Museums with curator Sarah Lawson on curating a gallery for Southeast Asian art. These museum experiences have helped me learn how innovative curatorial practices could allow audiences to connect with material culture and engage with art as evidence of history through presenting a factual narrative grounded in academic scholarship. I'm particularly interested in exploring the intersection of humanities and technology. I'm a research assistant for the Mapping Color in History, a project led by my advisor, Professor Gina Kim, and supported by the Mittal Institute. One of the project's goals is to offer a deeper understanding of the genre of painting in South Asian art by using digital tools. I worked on reuniting a dispersed manuscript called the Dispersed Bhagavad Puran, dated to the early 16th century. Folios of this manuscript exist all over the world. And I created an online database for these folios and worked towards arranging them in the narrative sequence, which further adds to the understanding of this manuscript. And this is available for everybody to see, and it's an open source website. Along the lines of interdisciplinary research, I also founded the Digital Humanities Project, titled A Timeline of South Asian History, Dynasties, Rulers, and Key Events, an initiative that aims to present a detailed chronology of South Asian history, stretching from the dawn of the Indus Valley Civilization through 1947. This project brings together new and emerging scholarship to provide the latest proposed dates, providing a comprehensive chronology. The project aims to be a valuable academic resource for scholars of history, art history, South Asian studies, and those interested in the particulars of South Asia's geographic regions. This is also available online for everybody to view. In all of the projects I've pursued, an important goal for me has been to bring academic scholarship to a larger audience and democratizing access to art historical research. In the future, I plan to continue exploring the lesser known to make it visible and contribute to steering our discourse to a fact-based understanding of history. I leave you with this image of a sculpture whose identity was previously unclear that had traveled from the Gandharan region all the way to Mathura in the 2nd century CE. Through my ongoing research, I've been able to ascertain this object as being a sculpture of goddess Hathi. It is important to note that many similar artworks remain unexplored. Understanding such lesser-known objects can be vital to pushing the boundaries of our existing knowledge about South Asia and its people. And I'll try to keep doing that throughout my career. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Next, we have Vidya.
Hi, may I first say how excited I am to finally be in a conference in person with people in the room and not speaking at a computer. It is incredibly cool to be here. I also want to thank you for the opportunity of being on this panel, especially because I've been called young after a very long time, and I'm very excited to be young. So one of the things I'm really looking forward to is, because this is an early stage in this project, I would really like it. I mean, I'm very open to feedback, to ideas from everyone in the room. The broad idea, as you can see on the slide, is to explore the idea of the digital and how that has changed the notion of citizenship, and especially within India. But let me begin by talking a little bit about how I got here in the first place. My Ph.D. was on speed and technology in cricket, specifically the Indian Premier League. I've tried to discuss the influence of ICTs, which is information and communication technologies, and television on the sport of cricket, and the transformation, basically, of cricket into a digital platform. So I talk about how these layered mediations between ICTs and the IPL, well, in the thesis and now the book, have tried to throw light on the larger and sort of many-sided relationships between society and technology. This is basically the foundation of the idea of SDS, which is the discipline I work in, science, technology, and society. The book is also an attempt to understand how the spectator becomes reworked into a consumer and a user of the IPL platform. Once I finished my PhD, I thought about how I've been thinking about how this idea can translate into various other spaces as well. For instance, we've talked about how the government is a service provider. If the government is a service provider, does the citizen then become a consumer? If citizenship is like membership, are we, say, citizens of Facebook? Is Facebook a nation? These are all questions that I've been thinking about for a few years. So all of this sort of led me to think about the individual in the space of the digital, especially in the context of biometrics, especially with the Aadhaar project, which is a biometric identity project in India. And there has been conversations around surveillance and privacy, both in academia and in policy making, and it is this sort of broad area where I'm hoping to make a contribution. At the heart, I think, of the citizenship project is this idea of belonging, is this idea of whose identity, who belongs to a particular geographical area. And in this case, that geographical area is the nation state. So a legitimate member of the nation state would be a legal citizen. This person is entitled to have, has entitlements, has rights within this jurisdiction. And we've thought in the past of this membership as kind of trying to prove that you are the person you say you are. If you want access to a library, you show them a library card. If you want to drive on the street, you have a driving license. If you want to vote, you have a voter's ID. You get the picture. Basically, the holder of the card is identified as the person that they claim to be. The physical card is proof that I am the citizen that I claim that I am. I'm arguing that the biometric project changes this. When I give my biometrics for the Aadhaar, which includes taking of fingerprints, iris scans, and a photograph of facial recognition, I'm saying that this creates a digital double, so to speak, of me in a larger database of citizens. So now, in order to get, say, my food grain discounts or voting rights or access to a state-owned library, I have to now authenticate myself via those things that are already in the database. If my fingerprint and iris scan does not match the details that are already in the database, I cannot get those entitlements. I can be denied these entitlements. So bear with me here. The large question here is that, is the digital double then the citizen? And I'm merely trying to authenticate myself as that person. That person is the citizen. Now, of course, this has happened with ID cards. People can be, ID cards didn't work very well. There is no question that there is a huge problem of, how public distribution systems work and rights of citizens and all. And this was a huge problem with ID cards. Most people didn't have them, and if they had them, there was fraud. That you could be taken for a ride about with respect to how these were authenticated. There were a lot of problems, but have those problems been solved using this version of biometric identity is the question. However, even in these problematic scenarios, the citizenship of a person was vested within the body, my actual physical being. I was still the citizen. But with biometrics, this personhood, this citizenhood, citizenship appears, I'm saying, to perhaps have shifted. If I have to prove that I am the person in the database, who is the citizen is one of the big questions. One of the other questions I grapple with in my project is the idea of power. James Scott, who wrote a fantastic book called Seeing Like the State, says that the state essentially works to make its citizens visible to it, right? Whether it is to prevent them from rebelling or to make it easier to tax them or to make them go to war on behalf of the state needs to see who its citizens are. But now I'm saying that they're taking one step further. We're going from seeing the people to surveilling people, which is a subtle shift in the way in which power will operate. This is, of course, not just in India with Aadhaar. We know from the Snowden revelations that the NSA is listening to everyone, even in America. There's no escaping that. And I'm saying that digital technologies essentially are making it harder for the citizen to negotiate with the state while actually making it easier for the state to see the citizens. What this does is that it creates makes the citizen into a sort of data subject. Usha Raghunathan has called this the trickle up theory. She talks about how there's no dearth of people in India, but all of these people, most of these people are poor, so they are not much used to the market, but they can still contribute with their data. So if, she says, what you can extract from them is their personally identifiable information. This is essentially the problem of big data and Facebook and things like that. And what happens is that it moves up the food chain, it trickles up, and those at the top of the food chain eventually make profits out of the data of all of these millions of people. This, and Professor Sheila Jasanoff pointed this out earlier, that it changes the directionality of the arrow of power. What she means by that is that in a democracy, the ultimate power must rest theoretically with the citizen, who has rights vis-a-vis the state, and has, in a way, enabled the state in the first place. But if you increase this visibilization, it allows the creation of a new order of citizens. Who is being surveilled? Who has the ability to lock their biometrics, for instance, in the case of Aadhaar? What kinds of citizens does this new form of identifying citizens create? It is, at one end of the project, I'm trying to see if the sort of, maybe let's use the word analog, if the analog, political, rights-bearing, dissenting citizen is now shifting towards the idea of a citizen as a data subject. So using that ethos, that democracy is that people empower the state, does the influx of technology into governance systems, originally the promise was this, right? That governance systems would become more transparent. You would not have to, it would be easier for you to get your emoluments. You would know what you're supposed to get. You would know where your application is in the large process of bureaucratic India. But does it do that, is the question. Has it, in fact, made it harder for a layperson to access the state? There is no, you don't negotiate with a fingerprint scanner. You cannot tell them that I'm going to come back tomorrow and I'll pay you tomorrow. Does that then, does it reduce the amount of negotiation power that a citizen had with respect to the state? There are also, I think, important questions of access to technologies. How many people, especially, say, women or people in the rural poor, who have access to the internet and to digital technologies? There's the question of digital literacy. Do people know how to use these technologies? Does the person at the lowest end of the spectrum understand what it means to be an owner of their digital exhaust, whatever data exhaust? What does it mean to be the owner of data? Also, internet penetration across India. In 2020, it was still about 50%. So if all of the digital authentication and the digitization itself depends on internet penetration. If there is no internet, how are you going to access any of these things? And then, of course, the question of infrastructure. How good is the internet connection? There's a lovely story that Ritika Khera writes about in her paper with John Rez. She writes about how in this village there was, these people had to get their ration, basically the discounted food grains. And they all went to the shop, and the authentication system wouldn't work. And the guy was like, yeah, there's no network here, so why don't we come back tomorrow? There is this hill near the village, and on top of that hill is a tree. Under that tree, my cell phone works. So they all got their emoluments, and the next day, they all the ration, the rice, the dal, the sugar, they collected all of this. And the next day, everyone in the village came back to the shop, at which point a procession was taken out to go to this hill, where everyone stood in this particular spot with the authenticating, and then one by one, everyone authenticated their fingerprint for things that they had already got yesterday. Now, as it happened, as it always does, some people's fingerprints didn't work. Nobody knows why, whether it was because the fingerprint wasn't authenticated, whether it was because the network failed. So then this trip was made once more the next day, and for each of these trips, the guy who, I'm assuming there were some, some perks of this for this guy to do this, and there was, things were taken out of the ration that this guy deserved, and less and less goes to the people. What it does is it changes, in my opinion, the relationship between the people and the state by using digital technologies. So if there is one question you take away from my presentation, I want it to be, by using digital technologies in mediating the relationship between people and the state, does the notion of the political rights-bearing dissenting citizen change? Of course, there are moments where it doesn't, and I've written a paper about how in the case of the net neutrality debate, for instance, there were the rules actually came into being because of a lot of activism by citizens in the digital realm. So there is an opposition, and it isn't very simply a conversation of everyone's been converted into a passive data subject, but the question still stands: does the relationship between the citizen and the state change? And I will leave it here for now.
Thank you so much. Three very interesting presentations. Of course, I have a bunch of questions, but I don't want to abuse my privileges here. So, Mr. Jha, wait, let's get you a microphone so that people who are online can hear you. And please say who you are.
My name is Prem Shankar Jha. I'm from India, and I'm here as a visiting fellow. I've got very, very short questions for each of you. Umar, first of all, you had a concert at 6,000 meters, that's 20,000 feet. Now, question is, how did you breathe? Because I know in my misguided youth, I did some mountaineering, and I got up to about 19. But the point is that breathing was not easy. Is it because you've been living at those high altitudes already, and so your lungs are acclimatized? That's one question, simple, and maybe the answer is just one word. But I just want. How do you breathe at 6,000 meters? Your body is supposed to start deteriorating beyond 18,000 feet if you stay there for any length of time. But the Everesters and the Himalayan climbers have all attested to this. Okay. Now, for you, I wanted to ask you one question. This shift you talked about the shift in the concept from mother and child to the female goddess as the destroyer. Do you think that this has anything to do with the one continuity I can think is the need to protect? So when do you become a destroyer? In which society is that perception developed? Does it have anything to do with the impressions or the relationship between the female and the male of the species? For example, if the men have all gone away to war or been taken off to the salt mines or something, would there be some such change? Would there be over a time a change like this? And Vidya, the thing I wanted to, I think this is a very important thing that you're doing. And the question that arises is, what you're really saying that digitization takes away one critical right of the human being, which is the right to abstain from a governmental or a social process. This is a fundamental right that we take for granted. You don't have to go and do this. You don't have to do that. But if you can't survive without having to first go and authenticate yourself with an Aadhaar card to get your rations or whatever it may be, then a right of abstention is being taken away, and that's slavery.
Three very good.
Should we start with Nosher? Should I go first?
No, why don't you go first?
Yeah, I can take it.
Nosher will come back to you in a minute.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
I think it's a very important point, the right to abstain. And I think it's more than abstention from something like voting or something else. The idea that I don't know what happens to my data. I mean, no one knows what is being collected. And we talk always about the interoperability of databases. And what that does is it allows a wide-ranging amount of data about me to be recorded by various people, and how that gets used. And you're absolutely right in saying that if I don't have the right to say I don't want to give my data here, I don't want to do this, I get left out of a lot of databases. This also links, in my opinion, to the other idea of wanting to be counted. So there are a lot of people who want to be on these lists. I mean, for instance, people with, trans people who've tried to be on every database that is possible because they want to be counted as people. And then if their fingerprints are not authenticated, if they cannot be on this database, what does it mean? So while it's important for those who are in the database to be able to get out of it, it's as problematic, as getting into it as well. So both of these, I think, work together.
Vaishnavi, why don't we?
Thank you so much for your question. I would like to start that it is indeed protection, I think, which is inherently sort of embedded in the mother-child images. And in the early period, and I think, like 1st to 5th centuries, I would say. These goddesses, in all of the traditions that I mentioned, were worshipped as apatropic deities, or I would say goddesses even, who were deities which were worshipped, and people would offer them, some sort of sacrifice or any sort of like prasad, as we may call, right, in order to gain their protection. And they would be yakshas or yakshis or guardian deities who would protect them. In the case of the Saptamatrikas, particularly the one that I showed from Gujarat, the transition sort of is from the mothers of Skanda that are also mentioned in the Mahabharata, which gain like a visual representation in the early centuries. And then when the Devi Mahatmya comes in, what happens is we have these mothers of Skanda or Saptamatrikas, the 7 mothers, being adopted as part of the narrative, which is where they become the Shaktis of each of the male gods, who then sort of go into war and like fight alongside Ambika and Durga. And that is the nature that is like inherently changes, where they are still protecting, but they then sort of lose the child that they are carrying, and then suddenly they start holding weapons associated with the male Shaktis that are coming in, and then also have the vehicles. So that's an interesting time period when this transition is happening, especially for the Saptamatrikas. So thank you for your question.
Thank you. And Nosher, there's the breathing, and let me add one more element to it, which is how hard was it to talk your friends, your colleagues who are on that trip with you to join you? Did they also agree to be crazy like you?
Thank you for both of these questions. I wish I was in Cambridge right now to talk more about like your mountaineering experiences as well. But to answer the question, Hunza is at the altitude of about 2,500 meters. So all of the people there are physically and genetically capable of going to high altitudes. We actually, in fact, have more than 40 people who've been on an altitude over 8,000 meters. That's more than New York. Not that they do mountaineering in New York, but it's more than New York. And Hitesh, to answer your question, it's like whenever I put up a crazy idea, I have like, they are friends with me because of these crazy ideas, So they were like, okay, let's just do it. So my friends are really crazy. I think they're more crazier than me, and they were always always talking me whenever there were like problems or limitations that we faced. They were always there to encourage, and they were always there to find solutions. And I was listening to one of these talks earlier where the phrase "jugad" was used. It's one of my favorite words as well. And there was a lot of jugad inspired by my friends that eventually led us to this world record. Yeah.
Thank you, Jugad, being improvisation. Well, I think all of us are going to officially apply to be your friend for some crazy adventure, but there must be other questions. Chandra, please say who you are.
Yeah, Chandra Malampalli. I'm a visiting scholar at Harvard Divinity School. I have a question for Vidya. Vidya, there's been a lot of writing about the role of the colonial state in counting and classifying people according to caste and religion. Could you say a bit more about digital citizenship and what exactly gets inscribed into a digital identity, and whether a digital identity actually has the capacity to mitigate differences of all these identities that have been imported into the knowledge of the state?
Thank you for that question. I was actually hoping to talk about that a little bit because the digital identity, I've talked about this in terms of activism, etc., that the divisions of the physical world, the IRL, in real life, spill seamlessly into the digital space as well, in terms of, we've seen how women get trolled more than men on social media, activists get a bad rap online. But then other than that, if you look at access or infrastructure access or even digital literacy, all of this directly translates into who has access, right? So upper class English speakers have far more access to these things and have far more literacy about how to, protect your digital identity, etc. in this space. So while I mean, I know I come across sometimes as someone who completely said the digital is the worst thing in the world, but that's absolutely not what I'm saying. I'm saying in the way that this is deployed, and I think there was some talk about this in the previous panel as well, about how technologies such as the digital could be used for exactly what you're saying, to say, to minimize identities of caste or religion, to say the citizen does not have, should not be discriminated on this basis. But in our experience so far, in the way that any sort of identity project works, first of all, the caste, the religion, all of these things spill into it. The other aspect is that it creates newer divisions, in my opinion. It creates a further classification of people who have the power, or who are able to negotiate with power, and those who cannot. I know that answers the question.
Other questions?
I can ask one to Nosher, if
Yes.
that's okay. Nosher, thank you so much for your wonderful presentation. I loved hearing about your projects and the activities that you've been doing in Pakistan. And I was just thinking how the art that I study is such a permanent form, right? It's like sculpture or painting. It's a tangible form, whereas the arts that you sort of look at and study is ephemeral art, which can be performed and like improvised. I wonder if you felt like a tension between the two, the ephemeral art of sort of performance, and then sort of translating it or transforming it into like this permanent form of recordings and videos. And have you faced any challenges working with artists, communities, in sort of like, making it a permanent form of art which is available for everybody, which I personally feel is great, that everybody can sort of experience it. But I wonder if there's any challenges that you've faced while working with the communities.
Thank you so much for your question. That's such an interesting question. And I wanted someone to ask me this, which is basically like whenever I was working with older poets and musicians in the area, particularly when we were recording these local performances, which are known as buzums in the area, they would always be like, let your phone down, enjoy the performance, because the idea of a buzum is that it has to be enjoyed by everyone. It's a performance, not to be seen elsewhere, but for that small gathering. So, and when we were talking about this, I talked with multiple artists, and there's this energy in a buzum, which is very hard to record on a phone or on like an audio device, because it's not just one person performing, it's the whole, like the whole group starts to sing. The artist is merely the leader, or the musician is just merely the leader. He starts and everyone knows these songs, because these songs and these, like this literature has been there since people were they have grown up in this literature. So everyone, like, I know what the next phrase is, and I would just sing along, and it's just this whole experience of sorts. So when you talk to these artists, they were like, just don't do it on a phone. It just takes away all the, it takes away the experience. It just leaves you with a video and an audio, which is not that impressive. So what we tried to do was we sat down with some experts, some musical experts. So we were like, how do we capture that energy? And in order to do that, we used a multitude of like special mics, 360 videos and stuff. So that, and the audio in particular, the way that we use it was like binaural. So like once you sit there and you have like, even if you're listening to a recording later, you could, if you close your eyes and listen to the audio recording, you could feel that you're in the room. And we kept it as raw as possible, which was like, we didn't add any additional instruments, or we didn't mix or master the audio, because we wanted the phrases, the rawness of the whole idea or of the whole environment to be captured as well. And once we did that, we worked with the like older sort of people, older musicians who weren't as comfortable with recording. And once we showed it to them, we got their approval. They were like, oh yeah, if you're trying to do something like this is something that we endorse. But so there was this sort of tension. But eventually, I think with more like mediums of audio and video coming in, more people are more receptible to recordings than they were when, I would say, like 10 years ago. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Nosher. Listen, I know it's getting late, so I was thinking, do you have a quick one? I see it's your student here, so Gina, did you have a quick question?
I can ask Vaishnavi. I don't want to hold
you can do a quick one. Yeah.
All right. Well, no, but I really enjoyed all the papers, presentations. It was wonderful. And I wanted to go back to the question that was asked about the transition from the mother to caring mother to sort of martial. And the one thing that we did talk about is this great and little tradition, the notion of the great and little tradition that Raghunathan has sort of came up with, and thinking about sort of more community-based practices to institutionalized religion. And we did talk about sort of mother goddesses with the protective, caring children is sort of kind of, more community-based, maybe what you call like, will call little tradition. So there is that transition. But then I think what I forgot the earlier question about
Mr. Jha, yeah.
Mr. Jha's question about social history, in a way that why the martial is needed there. And I think that's actually an interesting question to ponder. And that's where sort of looking into Devi Mahatmya's formation and it tied to sort of social political history of the time when this is forming. I think that actually is really interesting to think about why martial goddess then, like that transition. So I think that's actually a really interesting suggestion. I think you should.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think the idea of like popular religions versus like the greater traditions, as Professor Kim mentioned about little and great traditions, is definitely part of my dissertation. And I also feel like the need of the martial, I still have to sort of continue working on this aspect. But I would say like there is a lot of scholarship which talks about what was happening in like the dynastical sort of rule that was coming in. And a lot of that is also sort of influencing the ways in which visual representations are changing, not just for mother-child images, I would say, for all other like deities within the pantheons as well. And then there's the rise of the esoteric nature of all of these religions, as we know as like tantric Buddhism or like tantric Shaivism, and this is all feeding into what's happening with the mother goddess as well.
Thank you very much. Thank you. We should end here. I'm going to, in a couple of minutes, call Tarun Khanna up to give us a last word. But before that, I should just say thank you very much, Nosher Ali Khan. Thank you, Vaishnavi Patel. Thank you so much, Vidya Subramanian. Thank you. Really delightful. I'm sorry, we have to. Yeah. We should end now, but before we end, President Larry Bacow had an address for this group, and I'm just going to ask my friends. It's about four minutes or so. I'm going to ask my friends at the back for us to play that for us, and then maybe Tarun, as soon as that is over, can come up and give us a closing remark. So are you ready with, this is Harvard President Larry Bacow, his address. He's traveling, otherwise he would be here. And this is an address that he had taped just before he set off for us.
Good morning. I want to take this moment to thank you for being part of the Lakshmi Mittal South Asia Institute, and to welcome the Executive Council, the Advisory Council, and the Arts Council to today's symposium. I'm especially grateful to the Mittal family, Lakshmi and Adit, for their leadership and friendship. Although I'm unable to be there with you today, I'm pleased that the Lakshmi Mittal and Family South Asia Institute annual symposium is actually taking place in person, well, at least in hybrid form. This is truly a sign of renewal, and I'm proud of the Harvard community, which has demonstrated remarkable resilience and creativity over the past 2+ years. As we emerge from the pandemic, I think Harvard is uniquely positioned to have significant impact on the key issues of our times, bringing to bear talents across the university from the sciences to the humanities. Let me just provide for you, I think, a few examples of how we're leveraging Harvard's many strengths. This pandemic has really laid bare the challenging problem of inequality throughout the world. Whether or not we're talking about inequality with respect to wealth or income, or inequality with respect to access to healthcare, the pandemic underscores our need to address this troubling, difficult issue. In almost every school at Harvard, we have faculty working on these issues. I think it's important that we make progress, because until we do, I think we would risk destabilizing governments and democracies throughout the world. On climate, in every school at Harvard, there are people who are working on climate change, from the basic science to technology to corporate strategy and governance. Under the leadership of Jim Stock, new Vice Provost for Climate and Sustainability, a comprehensive university-wide approach to the issues of climate will empower us, I think, to strengthen and expand our existing work. You'll hear more during this symposium about the specific impact of our work in this area on South Asia and the cascading impact I think it's likely to have around the world. The expansion of our campus in Alston, which brings together SEAS and Harvard Business School and the Harvard Innovation Labs and the newly reimagined American Repertory Theater, the Art Lab, and the new Enterprise Research Campus, is going to create innovation and creativity that I think over time will have global significance. It's really, really exciting what's going on in Alston. For those of you who've not been back to campus, I hope you'll be able to come back and see the progress that we've made in recent times. In the sciences, the launch of the Kempner Institute represents an enormous opportunity to shape the fields of both natural and artificial intelligence. And I think an unprecedented chance to join discovery across these two fields. Similarly, quantum is one of the university's most promising frontiers. The ability to measure, engineer, and control matter at the single matter atom level represents countless opportunities that could profoundly and positively change the way in which we live and work. Our life sciences offers an opportunity to leverage Harvard's breadth and depth of talent. We are in a new era of technological acceleration at the intersection of biology, engineering, and large-scale computation. We have a real opportunity to leverage this for maximum impact and societal benefit. I think a good example is the Massachusetts Consortium on Pathogen Readiness, which, working with our hospitals and research institutions in and around Boston, where Harvard advanced research and had direct impact on the development of COVID vaccines. 2 of the 3 vaccines in use, at least in the United States, came out of Harvard Medical School labs. And by bringing together faculty from across the university, our neighboring institutions, all of our teaching hospitals, the pharmaceutical industry and the biotech industry, we've been able to make enormous progress in addressing the challenge posed by COVID. At the end of the day, everything we do revolves around people. Great faculty and great students, supported by great staff. Recruiting and retaining the very best people is a global priority that underpins all that we do. Our goal is to make Harvard the destination of choice for the very best people, faculty and students, and to support those people while they're here, but also to stay connected to them once they graduate and move on. It's one of the reasons why having a presence in so many different parts of the world is important, and one of the reasons why I'm so proud of what the Mittal Family Institute is doing for us in South Asia. The Mittal Institute embodies all of this, scholarship with a full spectrum platform that includes intellectual inquiry across the sciences, the social sciences, and the humanities, with large-scale projects on universal healthcare and climate, and always responsive to tradition and history rooted in the South Asia region. Anchored in our Delhi office, but with local representation in Lahore and Dhaka and Kathmandu, along with what we have right here in Cambridge as a local presence, the Lakshmi Mittal Family and South Asia Institute embodies literally all that we do at Harvard. I want to thank each and every one of you for participating in this symposium. I want to thank you all for helping us to create this institute. I want to thank all of you for the work that you do that extends Harvard's presence and our footprint and our opportunity to work with our colleagues and friends throughout South Asia. Thank you again. Take care, and please, please enjoy everything that will take place at this conference in the next few days. Take care.
I would just, first of all, thank you all for coming, particularly those of you who stayed through the proceedings. As you can see, the collective we have just created what I like to describe as people are tired of hearing me say this, but I think it bears repetition because I do think it's a little bit unique across these regional centers. We've created a platform, in effect, so that anybody with an intellectual interest, research and teaching from any part of the university community can, in my idealized state, imagine a pure plug-and-play solution. So you just come to us with something and we make it happen. We meaning, again, not me, I don't usually get anything done, but people like Hitesh and the team around us are really fabulous at enabling, whether it's undergraduate students, grad students, visiting scholars, faculty, postdocs, everybody. We literally have, I'm not exaggerating, hundreds of projects going on at any point in time. And I like to say that we are roughly, over the long haul, a third in the sciences, a third in the humanities, and a third in the social sciences, which is a way of saying that we want to be equidistant across all. So I'm sort of trying to walk the talk that I was holding Vikram's panel, their feet to the fire, saying everybody's so siloed. Because I think that's kind of what's missing in these otherwise excellent research universities. I'm trained as an applied mathematician, masquerading as an economist, and left to my own devices, that's what I would do. I would, but for whatever reason, serendipitously, I found myself in this role. So this is what we created. It's thriving, it's very strong, and I think it's entirely giving voice to otherwise latent demand in some sense. There's a demand in the community. There really wasn't a way to do it, and so creation of the platform and making it, I wouldn't say seamless, but approximating seamless is the way to go. The other comment I'd make is that, which again people will tire of hearing me say, but I do think it's also fundamental, is that we need touch points to the societies that we're studying. We need to be on the ground. We need to make it easier for people to go back and forth. Obviously, COVID has been a huge wrench in that. But if I look over the 12 years that I've had this role, I think we have made it easier and easier and easier. Having the LUMS presence that Babar Saab was instrumental in kicking off, I think was a lovely catalyst. Having approximate presence when Abed Bhai was alive and a mentor to me from BRAC was terrific. We've had trouble cementing a relation with BRAC. It's just a many-headed beast, but the intent is there. We've had presence in Kathmandu. And of course now we have just an amazing office in New Delhi that I hope will be available to everybody. And I keep telling people it's available to the academic community in general, because I think one of the things that those centers can do, what I mean by that, and I'm not supposed to say this, but I'll say it, not just Harvard people, just anybody who is interested in scholarship can come forward and partner with us, because that's how you trigger collaborations. So really, I think the ethos is openness and a platform approach, and it just feeds on itself. There's really not much that we have to do beyond that, and having transparent governance and things of that nature. But most of all, it remains for me to thank you again and welcome your encouragement, support in all its dimensions, and then invite you to another lovely lunch down the hall. So thank you, and see you there.